Northern News Now.
Good evening, I'm Dan Wolf. Thanks for joining us. Governor Walz will soon sign a bill making recreational pot legal in Minnesota. Some businesses have already been preparing for that change. Northern News Now's Larissa Millis spoke with an economist about how legal use could impact Minnesota's economy. Larissa?
Dan, after being passed by the Minnesota Senate and House, and with Governor Tim Walz expected to sign it into law, a bill legalizing adult use recreational marijuana will go into effect August 1st, making Minnesota the 23rd state to legalize cannabis. Minnesotans 21 and older will be allowed to possess or transport up to 2 ounces of cannabis flower, 8 grams of concentrate, and 800 milligrams of edible product. They can also grow up to 8 cannabis plants with no more than 4 being mature, and they can possess up to 2 pounds of cannabis flower in their home. The tax on cannabis product sales will now be 10%, with 80% of that going to the state's general fund and the other 20% to local government aid. Monica Haynes, the director of the Bureau of Business and Economic Research at UMD, says her students studied last summer's legalization of low-dose hemp THC edibles in Minnesota, which did not have additional tax. That changes with this new legislation.
So now, when you're later seeing kind of how the law has changed, I think the state will definitely start seeing some of those larger impacts that come from those different taxes and regulations.
Haynes says research on other states that have legalized marijuana shows that Minnesota could see at least $60 to $80 million in tax revenue from all cannabis sales each year. While personal recreational use will be legal this summer, it will likely be at least a year until people can actually go into a business and buy marijuana products. People who want to start a business and sell will have to apply for a license through the state's newly created Office of Cannabis Management.
Thank you, Larissa. The bill will also erase all low-level cannabis convictions. Coming up tonight at 10, we'll hear from a local cannabis company owner that's currently selling illegal THC and drinks about how their business might be impacted by all these changes.